Okay, let's turn from Lucknow to the other big story today because the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang is on a 2-day visit to India. The meeting shrouded in secrecy, meeting the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and scheduled to meet Foreign Minister Dr. Jaishankar. No big announcements made during that meeting with the Indian External Affairs Minister. The two countries say they will continue to dialogue aimed at disengaging in Ladakh, where they've been in a face-off for 2 years now. Paulo Misa brings you today's other big story.
China has reached out to India, first time since the Ladakh border face-off 2 years ago. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang arrived in the national capital on March 24th on a 2-day visit. Neither Delhi nor Beijing announced Wang's visit to India. Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart met Friday for delegation-level talks in Delhi. After the meeting, Jaishankar asserted the Chinese leader had expressed a desire to return to normalcy.
I would describe our current situation as work in progress, obviously at a slower pace than desirable. And my discussions with FM Wang today were aimed at expediting that process.
The ongoing Russia-Ukraine war and its economic impact on energy prices was also on the agenda.
On Ukraine, we discussed our respective approaches and perspectives, but agreed that diplomacy and dialogue must be the priority.
Wang's visit to India comes at a time when the United States is trying to isolate Russia on the global stage. India has abstained from voting against Russia at the UN, a stand taken by China as well. Wang also met India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Wang's visit can set the ball rolling for further dialogue aimed at disengagement at all friction points in Ladakh. But process could be slow. India is still mum about Prime Minister Modi attending the BRICS summit to be hosted by Beijing later this year.
If you were to ask me if our relationship is normal today, the answer would be no. Those words of External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar describing and summarizing the big takeaway from Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's much shrouded in secrecy visit to India. The first time since the Galwan face-off, India making it absolutely clear that disengagement is the only way forward if de-escalation is to happen next. Paulami Saha in Delhi for India Today.
So what does the visit of the Chinese Foreign Minister to the country mean? Joining us now, Brahma Chelani, who's been a leading strategic affairs expert tracking China for years, and Pinak Ranjan Chakravarti, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Appreciate both of you joining us. How do you see this visit, Brahma Chelani, the highest level engagement between the two countries since the face-off in 2020 in Ladakh? Is it an icebreaker? Coming at a time when there is also the Russia-Ukraine conflict. How do you view this visit?
Well, the Chinese foreign minister came from Pakistan and Afghanistan as part of China's efforts to cement a China-Pakistan-Taliban strategic nexus, a nexus that helps to contain India. But it's important to note that China has already offered a quote-unquote solution to the military crisis. It has repeatedly asked India to accept the new realities on the ground. That is, accept China's land grabs in Ladakh of April 2020 and normalize bilateral relations. In other words, from the Chinese perspective, the ball is in India's court. India, however, has been reluctant to accept the fait accompli that China is seeking to impose. And as the Indian Army chief has said recently, that Indian forces are at the highest level of operational preparedness. Yet, even
you don't see this as an icebreaker. Sorry, you don't see this as an icebreaker. You don't see that the Chinese are reaching out to India specifically in any meaningful manner at the moment.
Well, even as 2 lakh Indian troops remain forward deployed, some of them in eyeball to eyeball standoffs with Chinese forces, India is signaling a readiness to normalize political relations. That's the significance of hosting Wang Yi. Trade and economic relations were never affected by the Chinese aggression because of India's reluctance to impose trade sanctions. Last year, Chinese exports to India jumped almost 50%. In fact, last year, China's bilateral trade surplus with India reached almost $70 billion, overtaking India's total defense budget. So in a way, India is underwriting China's containment of India. So the political relations have not been normal, but now thanks to India hosting Wang, maybe even in the political domain, relations might begin to look somewhat normal. It's just the military domain where the relations are not normal.
Is it so easy to separate that, Ambassador Pinak Chakravarti, the military dimension from the political dimension, the trade dimension from the strategic dimension of a country which is in an eyeball-to-eyeball conflict with us in Ladakh, is accused of land grabbing? Can we place the Chinese relationship in neat boxes at the moment?
We can't, I think, and we have said so repeatedly. China, of course, wants us to do that, saying that, look, let us grab some land in Ladakh we have, and let us do what we want there. Because of historical reasons, we don't have a border marked on the ground, but let us normalize in other areas. That has been their sort of mantra for a very long time. What we are saying is that, no, we can't have that. Normalization can only take place if you go back to the status quo. That's the position. And I think this visit is only to keep lines of communication open. I do not think this visit has added or made any progress between our position or any brought us any together. The readout by the Chinese Foreign Ministry, it contains the same old cliches like, we must have a win-win situation. We must go forward in our sort of bilateral interaction, etc., etc. Basically, what China wants is that, look, we will do what we want in Ladakh, etc. We will join the OIC in making remarks on Kashmir. We will sort of do the tango with the Taliban. But India has to accept all this because and continue normal relations with us. I mean, I do not know any government in India which would be willing to accept this kind of a proposition.
So, Ambassador Chakravarti, you've got the Chinese inviting the Prime Minister later this year to Beijing. We are told for the BRICS summit. Mr. Modi's had a good relationship in the past with the Chinese leadership in terms of the number of times he's gone to Beijing. Do you believe we should carry on with that relationship while we accuse the Chinese of a land grab in Ladakh?
Well, I think the Chinese intention is precisely that this kind of a saying, coming over here without being invited, and as you would have noticed, India played a very low key, no announcement, etc., no joint statement, nothing of that sort. The fact is that the Chinese are going into another, Communist Party Congress, where Xi will be again, I think, has to make a mark to retain his authority and position. And the BRICS and RIC are seen as something, important for his sort of international, image and projection. Now, if India refuses to attend these, it will be a bit of a loss of face for Beijing, which is not a very good thing for them because Chinese are very sensitive to loss of face. So I think India has the leverage now, whether to accept or not to accept. And we will see. We are going to play this out. We are not going to accept what China is saying, which is the same old stale dish that they have again put forward.
Sure. It's interesting the way you're putting it, Ambassador. Clearly, therefore, Brahma Chelani, India has to now calibrate its equations with China at a time, as I said at the outset, Russia and Ukraine conflict, Russia moving close to China, the Chinese troops still very much in Ladakh. I mean, how does India now navigate this? Wang comes to India unannounced, India keeps it low-key. Do the Chinese hold all the cards at the end of the day? Is that the reality? That we are reacting in a sense to whatever the Chinese are doing?
Unfortunately, the key leverage that we had, we surrendered at the negotiating table little over a year ago when we vacated the Kailash Heights. So once you forfeit your leverage, you weaken your position in the negotiation. So it's not a surprise that even the recent round of military talks failed to make progress. But to look at the larger picture, Xi Jinping is seeking a third term as president this year. He has picked a border fight with India that China cannot win. A war between these two nuclear-armed demographic titans is likely to end in a bloody stalemate with heavy losses on both sides. And this is not the only instance in which Xi Jinping's aggressive policies have proved to be counterproductive. In fact, the military clashes of 2 years ago, of June 2020, were a national humiliation for China, resulting in China's first combat deaths in over 4 decades. So given the, he has boxed himself into a corner, yet he refuses to back down. And that is not surprising because he doesn't want to appear before the National Congress as somebody who first sprung a military surprise on India and then backed down. So I don't think this border crisis is going to end very soon.
But should India, but very quickly, should India, therefore, should the Prime Minister be accepting this invitation, going to BRICS, saying it's a multilateral organization, therefore I will go to Beijing, or should India take a tougher stand? What's your view, very quickly?
Well, Modi has already met Xi Jinping 18 times. Despite that, we had the Chinese aggression. If Modi goes to Beijing for the BRICS summit, the political cost for him at home would be highly significant. I don't think he will go there without the border crisis being resolved.
Okay. So you believe that a full-fledged relationship, including diplomatic ties with Beijing, is premised on resolving the border issue. Mr. Chakravarti, Ambassador Chakravarti, suggesting that these are delicate times. It's a relationship that is fraught with risk, but one that often is seen by the Chinese in different boxes. To both of you, thank you very much for joining me here on the news today and making sense of the Chinese foreign minister's unannounced visit.